In this video, we're going to go through the different ways that we can create estimates. So we can have a look at copying estimates as well as using templates. The first of the three ways that we're going to go through is by using the plus button right here. And what it's going to do is create an estimate based off of the default template that you set. Now, if you're like 99% of people who probably haven't set a default template, we will A, come to that later, and B, for now, it's just going to be using one of the BuildXact templates that will allow me to start using an estimate. Now, this is more or less a checklist of all the stuff that we think goes into a single story building. The second way of creating an estimate is that you can actually copy previous quotes. And this is fantastic if you ever need to do revisions. So you might get a quote back from a customer and they might need to do a version 2. Now, again, this is a really fantastic way of doing that. Note that when you do copy quotes, it's going to ask you which bits of the old quote need to come back into the new one. So you can pick and choose whether the plans copy across, for example, whether the same cover letters are used and the quote content is used, totally up to you. But again, copying is fantastic for versions. And also a really, really good if you get a scenario where you're asked to do a quote, but it's very similar to one you've done before. You can simply reuse the old estimate, just rename it, add new customer details, etc., and you're off and running. The third way of starting a quote is from templates. So I'm going to go down to templates in here. You'll notice there are a bunch of templates that we've put already into the system, and you can absolutely use any of them by simply using this plus button here. If you hover over it, it will say use this template to create a new template estimate. And the best way to think about this is just making a copy of that template. So you're not modifying the original one. In fact, that's exactly what these lock symbols mean. You're completely fine to make your own templates, which you can make from scratch using this new template button. As we get into other videos, we'll talk more about how you can grab an old estimate and turn it into a template as well. But just to circle back on the first point I made about starting the estimate from the plus button on the estimate screen, I talked about the default template, and that's exactly what this little pin does. So if down the track you create your template and you go, great, hey, every time I do a quote, I want to start from my template, this is how you actually go and choose which of those templates from that list is the default one that you'll use every time. Now, we're going to go back to the estimates here. And just for the sake of this example, what we're going to do is using this plus button, which, as I mentioned, for most of you, will give you a standard checklist of a new single story building. And when I do this, it's going to ask me the same questions it asks every time. Things like description, which is really just the title of the quote, and can be whatever you like, but most commonly we see it as the site address. Sometimes people will also have a bit of a naming convention they use, and that's totally fine, and you can just simply put that in here. Ultimately, it's just the name that we give it, and we will put this at the top of the quote later on. Next, we have building type. So that's obviously just wanting to know what type of work it is. You can pick from this list here, or you can just type in anything you want. And with these drop downs, we're going to see them a few places around the software. They can be altered within this My Business tab, so you can change what these default options are. Next, customer name. And I'm just going to say this one's for me as an example. And now this is going to create me a new customer record under the client section here. If you do repeat work, when you type it in, it will search and look for existing customers, so you can pick that out of the list here too. Lastly, we did want to enter in about how they heard about us, so we can track the source of our leads. And I'm just going to say Google. Again, though, this drop down, like the building type, can be changed within the My Business section. Quick mention of this tick box here. This is fantastic if you never need to import entire estimates. We won't be going through that in this video, but we definitely have content on it, on how to use it and what kind of format we need the Excel spreadsheet to be in for now. But here, I'm just going to click OK, and we'll carry on.